education, it's the most expensive thing a student will buy after a house.
Yeah.
When I've been to Australia, students are now paying at least 7 to 8 times more than what I paid.
Your accommodation is your first touch point. Once you land,
You're entering a new country with no network. You're going to have a very bad start. They left Australia after 1 or 2 years with a bad taste in their mouth because they were with the wrong people in the wrong place.
do you think 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, people actually need to go to colleges?
Very few people who actually know what they're going to do for the rest of their life. Like, I'm a trained accountant at undergrad. I'm doing nothing in accounting right now.
You should have one lawyer, one doctor, one engineer, and probably one IAS
Yeah.
as your fast dial friends or family.
Yeah. You're also going to want to know who are these people who drive Bentleys, right? One of the reasons why people buy a Rolls Royce or a Bentley is because
You do patrol
you're,
at club.
you're getting
and-
membership of a club. But there's no shortage of selling BMWs to people in Bhopal and Indore.
Yeah. Probably Meerut got more BMWs. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Shubha Khair, Namaste, Sat Shri Akal. Wherever you're listening, whatever time you're listening, thank you for tuning in. It seems that, my alternative career will become my main career. The kind of guest, the kind of love, the kind of, interest we're getting, on this podcast called Living Pod by Saurabh. It's not only overwhelming. Trust me, it's like, it's like pinching myself. I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. I have a business to run, and I'm telling to my team, you're making me shoot every second day, wherein I need to now even start thinking about how I'm looking, what is my angles and all that. But the most important thing, why we are doing it, is to get best of the people in the ecosystem called higher education. And today we have one guest, and trust me, it was not easy to get him in the office. But when he says that I'm only coming for me, and also traveling to Delhi from Mumbai only for this, that's like a big compliment. So without making me talk more, and as I always do, I will not introduce the guest. Guests should introduce themselves. So none other than Abizer Merchant, and he's a director of Macquarie University, covering India and Sri Lanka and more such destinations and source market. But someone who's in the industry for 20 years, I'm so excited to learn from Abizer. Welcome, Abizer, on podcast by Saurabh, which is called Living Pod. And thank you. It's a special thank you because, generally people are not flying only for podcasts, and you did it. So thank you. And let's make people listen all the wisdom and insights you've been sitting on.
Thanks, Saurabh. Thank you for your. It's actually a pleasure to be with you because we've been talking for so long, at least 6 months, trying to find dates and trying to get these things done. But unfortunately, whenever I come to Delhi, it's for a day trip. And then I come in the morning and back in the evening. But I said this time, I'm going to make some time and I'm going to do it with you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I know people want to listen you. They've been listening me. And I'm not a great articulator or a communicator, but I know how well you have command on not only language, but the subject. So let's start with your journey and would like to know more about you. How did you get into this ecosystem? Where did you study? What did you study? We want to know Abizer Merchant beyond Macquarie, beyond your role, which is a very prestigious role. Over to you.
In terms of on a more personal level, I grew up in Bombay. So born and brought up over there. While going to school and at school as well, my primary interest was sports. So believe it or not, I did actually very badly in school. So I struggled through school. It's only when I reached university is where I started to pick things up a bit. But through school, I really struggled academically, and it was a hard journey, for me. But I think what really helped me in school was the amount of sports I played. And it's amazing what you can learn on the sports ground and what it teaches you as well. And I think things like teamwork, things like how to lose, to play with honor, and then also appreciating the fact that someone is better than you and acknowledging that as well. So for me, schooling was really about the sports and what I did on the ground. And I played pretty much cricket, hockey, football, all of it. I still love sports and the rest as well. So for me, that was cool. At the university level, when I came to college, I studied in Bombay as well, to HR college in Bombay. I did a BCom over there as well, but I actually was more inclined towards the arts and humanities, to be honest. So social sciences, those areas really interested me, but for some reason I didn't pursue that. I did more of accounting and finance at the undergrad level. And then after that, I started working with my dad, who had his own business. My dad's a civil engineer, so I started working with him for about 2 to 3 years with him. And then I actually felt like, I need more. I want more for myself. I want more from life and those kind of things. And I'll be the first to admit that, I had a very privileged kind of life in terms of as a young person as well. If I had the choice to go abroad, my parents would pay for it. And there was no kind of financial, pressure, which we see now with a lot of students, is that financial pressure is a big part of what they do. I was fortunate that I didn't have those pressures. So I said, okay, I want to go abroad. I want to, kind of experience something different, something new. And that's when I kind of thought of, all my friends were either going to the UK or to, the US. And that time in 2001 and 2, Australia was relatively a new destination. And my only experience with Australia was either with the cricket team. I was a fan of, Steve Waugh, Alan Border, Shane Warne, great players as well. And it just fascinated me that, this different place has good universities. I don't know much about them. And I walked into an agent office and I said, look, I want to go to Australia. And the first thing she asked me was, which university would you like to go? And I said, well, I don't know any universities. I don't know of any universities in Australia, but why don't you recommend something to me? And then it just crossed my mind. I was reading a book, and in that book, the author was a graduate or PhD from Monash University. So I said, is Monash a good one? Because that's the only one I've heard of. And she said, yes, it's good. So I said, okay, then let's apply there. And that's the only university I applied to. I got an offer. It all happened. It took 3 months for a visa, which was quite normal, during that time. And for me, the Australian experience was transformational. And I'll tell you why, is because I started off being in school and in college generally introverted. I would not do public speaking. Something like what I'm doing right now would be something I would never imagine myself doing as a 16 or 18-year-old, in school. So what it really did for me was, really opened me out. It kind of unleashed my personality, what I was capable of doing, getting a better understanding, of myself as well. And one of the things that happened also during that time was when it came to accommodation, which is probably, something which is very relevant to what you're doing as well, is that I chose not to stay in the university accommodation. And I went over there. I had a friend. I stayed with him for a week or so, and then started looking for more private accommodation, And what I actually landed up doing was homestay. So I actually stayed with an Australian family. For the first 1 year of my degree. And it was just an incredible experience, because I not only got to know how to live on my own, manage my own life, but also understand Australian culture very, very deeply. Now, when you live with someone, you're exposed to it on a daily basis. So I think that gave me a good head start into life, culture in Australia. And coming from India, you come with zero network in a new country. So what you're really looking for is building your social and professional networks while you're there. And I got a head start on that simply because of my me staying with an Australian family as well. So even now when students ask me, I said, look, there are options beyond on campus, and there are things which you can do which are quite different, which will give you a great experience as well. So after that, in terms of work, my first job actually was, I did a Master of Marketing at Monash. After I finished work, I got a job with the media agency in Australia itself. Worked with them for a short while. I didn't like it that much, to be honest. And I was actually on my way back to India and said, I'm going to go back to India, finish my studies, I'm going to go back. And while I was on my way back, I actually, was my counselor who had, got me to Australia, applied for my visa. I happened to be in touch with her. And she said, I just met someone from La Trobe University, and they're looking for someone to manage their operations in India. And she said, why don't you apply? So it wasn't on my radar at all, and I just applied for it anyway. And
which year was this?
this is around 2005, yeah, 2004 and 5, yeah, around that time. And I got the job. The first 2 years I spent in India, really starting from scratch. In terms of La Troupe had no market in India. We started from scratch. And 2 years later, I moved back to Australia with La Troupe. And in total, I spent 10 years, with them.
Oh.
So I only finished in 2014.
So Amit was also there then?
Yeah, so Amit joined us in 2008, I think 8 or 9, when I moved back to Australia. And then Amit came, we were good friends anyway during his IDP days. So my first
You also
choice,
studied in IDP?
No, I came through IDP, yeah. I came through IDP Bombay, yeah.
Okay.
So, but I knew Amit because of my La Troupe work in India. And when I thought of someone who can manage the operations while I'm in Australia, the first person I went to, was him. And I think that, bond we still share today. We worked for almost 6 years together. And we're still great friends, and we're still always calling each other about different things, taking advice from each other, all of that. So that was, I think, I would say a great time when I was based in Melbourne. In 2014, I came back with Macquarie, and the reason for that also was, we had 2 small kids. We needed the support. We wanted to, be with family back here in India. So we came back at that time and said, look, let's give it 2 years. If you don't like it, then we can always go back to Australia if we have to. So the Macquarie role was based in India, and that's when I made the shift with them and came back to India. And it's been, we planned for 2 years. It's now been 11 years.
Wow.
So there you go.
Whew, that's a journey, and that's a good journey. I'll come, no journey is just smooth and hanky-dory. I'm sure there are lots of ups and downs who have gone through it. So you mentioned you went to one of the agent office and you named the agent. A student who is going to study in Australia or any country, should they go to an education partner? If yes, what stage? With what expectation or what preparation if they want to?
So I think the agents add a lot of value to the whole process, right? There's a lot of stuff which they have expertise over. But I think on a more broader level, I think the main value is that it's very difficult for a university to meet each and every student offshore in person before they come. And in our culture, I would say is that, we are a culture where we like making important decisions in a face-to-face environment. There's only so much you can do online, and then you want to actually meet a real person,
Right.
And I think that's where the agents kind of provide that level of support, where their services are not just about, attaching you to a particular university, but it's about a whole range of things, right from bank loans to accommodation to getting them to meet other friends who are going to the same, university or something of that sort. So they actually provide a whole range of services. And I think that's the reason why that, we've been, confident about having that model, which has worked all these years for us. And, the agents do, at least the agents we work with, they do what they're meant to be meant to be doing. And they understand, the process and what we're looking for as well. So I think from a student's perspective, it's how much help do you need? If you're someone like me who didn't even know the name of a university when you walked into an office, then you want to go to an agent, right? Or you want to get some kind of a level of advice over there. But if you're someone who has, let's say, a sibling, who's already in Australia, studying there, then the amount of information you need is limited. But what I'd also say, with the caveat I would add there, is that irrespective of that, the visa is complicated. And that's where the agents have real expertise. They know how to prepare the file, how to get things done, how to engage with the Australian High Commission when things go wrong. All of that stuff, they take on the risk for all of that, which is not easy to do. And for a university to do that on their own in a market like India, where we have large volumes, it actually makes a lot of sense to have a good, strong agent network who supports what they're trying to do.
But then, there are also talks like, there are lots of, I'm part of the industry, right? And we work with all the education partners, so I'm not saying anything to pull them down or to put them on pedestal. But the fact is, there are cases where, at times it feels embarrassing, and also it feels a bit concerning that, see, end of the day, you are dealing with student, not even student career, probably student life, not even student life, probably a family full year savings and hopes and opportunity from good to better or better to best, right? How a student should evaluate to go to that particular agent or a counselor, once they decided, okay, they needed help, right? What parameter they should have in their mind to decide on that education partner or agent, they may say.
So I think we've universities, let's say like Macquarie, for example, we've simplified that process because we won't accept an application from anyone, from an agent who's not authorized and has a formal agreement with us. So it kind of brings the pool down to a handful of people you can work with, and you don't need to go shopping as such. So generally when students ask us, which agent, I say go to the one closest to your house. Right. We have a few agents. We are confident that we've trained them well, and then you always have us to come back to if you have a problem. So, coming back to your point that I actually feel that when it comes to education, it's the most expensive thing a student will buy after a house.
Yeah.
So it's not even a 1 year savings.
And now people are not getting married, so even I won't say marriage also.
Yeah. So there you go. So, but what I'm trying to say is that it's a huge decision. It's life-changing. For me, it was life-changing. For a lot of people, it can be life-changing from a career point of view.
Yeah.
For me, it was more of a personality development kind of thing point of view. It happened for me. But, you're absolutely right. It is a life-changing thing. And the good agents appreciate that. And there are some agents who are actually Australian alumni themselves. So they've been through that process as well. They understand the duty of care that is required as well. But then you also have, agents who are not necessarily doing the right thing, right? And I think that's where the problem, starts. And I also while we have that problem, it's also on the universities to make sure that they're working with the right agents. That if your student is going to an agent you haven't trained properly, or you're not confident about, or has a bad track record, then that's on you. That's not on the student, that's not on the agent, that's on it's your responsibility, because under ESOS, we are required to only work with agents that we have formal agreements with. So that's another kind of challenge which universities need to take responsibility for.
But yes, you must be working with only few regulated agents or master agents. But then now they're also working with lots of sub-agents.
Sub-agents, yeah.
How are you dealing with, because it's chicken and egg, right? Every university need to grow. If I put business, aspect, if I want to expand, I need numbers. If I need numbers, then I also need to ensure that, they should come. And at time during that pursue, at time wrong agents or probably wrong process and mechanism start happening. So how you ensure, or what do you suggest that universities or ecosystem should have should we have a framework, or should we have a regulatory framework, or what should we do to ensure that there are less bad actors and more good actors?
Yeah. So look, that's a great question, and something which I think most universities who are in India will grapple with. They have this problem that we need to make sure the agents are doing the right thing. The sub-agency problem has been there. But if you've learned anything from the last 3-4 years, when compliance became a huge problem, attrition became a big problem, course jumping, all of that became a big problem, is that the need to have a strong network, a trustworthy network, is now even more important than it's ever been. So I think once again it comes down to the selection of the agents and the rest as well. Most universities now have moved to a system where the quality, the profile of the student is paramount, and it comes down to the level of appetite you have for risk, right? Now, for example, Macquarie has a small team here, so we can't actually, we don't have the resources to support more than a certain number of agents. So
how many agents are with Macquarie?
We're around 17.
That's very, very limited.
It's very small for a big market like India.
And then especially when you're aiming good numbers, because we need to be financially also viable. Working with only 17 agents, what are the pros and cons? But please complete your first aspect and then we'll talk this.
It's so just kind of finishing up on the the agent thing as well is one thing which I've been engaging with ARI primarily is and people like Nishi and Ravi, who's been there, been presidents of ARI as well, is how they're acting on their code of conduct when there is a problem, how they're acting, and I think they take that very seriously. So they do, act when they need to act. They are on top of things when it comes out and the kind of process they follow is pretty good. One thing which has been kind of discussed as well is that if you see in Australia, we have something called the MARA, which is a Migration Agent Registration Authority, right? So the MARA basically has very strict regulations for its members. They have compulsory ongoing CPD training, which you must do to keep your MARA registration, and also MARA membership that you need to maintain as well. They've got a very tight framework. It includes a framework where complaints are managed as well. So if you're a student and you've got a problem, or if you're a client for a MARA agent and you put in a complaint, the MARA will actually contact you, and they also have sanctions and penalties, including suspending you and losing a registration as a potential outcome of that. So I think that's a good framework to use when it comes to, you don't have to do it exactly the same, but there is a framework there, which is there used onshore, which we can replicate potentially in India with certain tweaks, because they're not migration agents. Even though they're dealing with student visas, they are technically not migration agents, but they do have responsibility, which is quite similar.
I mean, this is something, I don't think, do we have such framework for other destinations? Are you known, or are you aware of any such in UK or US?
I know I don't know, New Zealand still uses this. If you ever travel in New Zealand, right, they have this system of, they have the 4 or 5 leaves. I'm not sure which plant which that's referring to the leaf is from, but it tells you whether you have a 1-star, 2-star, 4-star, or 5-star rating, right? And all the organizations in the tourism industry or hotels or whatever display that. So it's the gold standard in terms of saying, look, we are that quality. It's like an ISO registration or ISI registration or whatever. So that kind of stuff gives confidence to the student that this person I'm going to has met certain compliance requirements and has a good track record. Rather than going blind and into an agent office, and we've seen horror stories coming out of certain parts of India where we've seen all kinds of nonsense happening. But so I think that's something which I've seen. I haven't seen a country do something like what the MARA does in Australia.
There is AIRC in for US.
Right.
There is BOILAS and UKIA for US. Very interesting question I'm going to ask now. And I heard this from someone who have asked this in a conference on a panel, right? And at panel, most of the time people only give very, very Googled answer or very no particular answer. Right? And by no means I want to get a question which is sensational, but we need to have a framework. At the same time, we need to increase the numbers. Everyone needs to grow. How can we have a balance? Or because, see, education agent or a partner who been, let's say, in this business for 20 years and, got, let's say, all group 8 or Russell groups and, their formal agreements because they are in the system and they have been performing and they also have network and connection all. But that means the new education partner or agent can't come in the ecosystem. And if they will come, it's a chicken and egg. Right? If they have Macquarie agreement, or they have group 8 or at least 4 of the best of universities or XYZ, they will have an edge. But how will they gain a formal agreement from best of universities? So that is the first part of the question. Second part, you're talking about framework, you're talking about lots of compliance and lots of, regulations. But is it because you are Macquarie and you are only looking for few hundred students from a country, and hence you have liberty and luxury to talk all these things because you any which way is only looking for quality. And what about those universities who probably starting new or they want to expand their recruitment? So
one thing I'll say, right, in terms of the need for growth as well, and I think all universities in Australia, barring a handful, would have learned this the hard way, is that once we recruit in volume and in large volumes, and a lot of the students either are not the right fit or they are leaving within one semester, it's actually costing us more. Right? So more is no longer, good
the vanity
if it's not the right fit. Right? Because you not only, first of all, you've ruined someone's career by putting them in the wrong place. Right? The second thing is, from a student acquisition point of view, we can talk dollars and revenue and the rest as well. It actually costs us more to see out a student than to acquire a student, because it creates a lot of trouble. A lot of resources go into managing all of that. Most universities have learned that during and post the pandemic, when there was a upsurge from India, that you're better off recruiting the right student fit, and everyone's fit will be different. My fit is so and so. For different other university, it'll be different. Our market segments are different, right? But as long as they fit your segment, there's no need to kind of go beyond that as well. So, and I also will say one thing is that India is a market where there are plenty of fish in the pond. You don't need to compete. Right. So if you're looking for certain things, there's plenty of it. You just need to be in the right place and fish in the right pond to get what you want. Right. So I would say from a strategic point of view, for us to have fewer agents is actually a strategic decision that we've made, saying that we only want to work with this group, and because they understand the profile of student we're looking for.
But are they not working with other sub-agents?
Of course they are. Of course
but then their framework and regulations are so strong.
Oh, you mean sub-agents?
Yeah.
No. So once again, what I'll say, at least for Macquarie contracts, is that sub-agency is actually not permitted. So it's actually in the contract that they cannot do it with another agent. So what we always tell our agents is that if we do find out, there will be action taken up over there as well in terms of that. And there's always been a discussion on aggregators and all of that happening, and then the use of sub-agents and the rest. And that's where the trouble really starts. Is because the student is being engaged by someone who hasn't been trained by us. So that's where the real trouble also starts to pick up. So that is definitely a problem, and that's addressed in different ways, whether it's through warning letters or in certain cases even termination. Yeah.
But then people are trying to bypass by having franchising model.
So
this
is all good questions. This is all good because look, I think every agent who has multiple branch offices, some choose to have their own office, completely owned office, and some have chosen a franchise model. Right, so it could be a local company who has their own brand, and then has let's say another agent who they're franchised with to access their network of universities as well, right? And we go to those offices because it is a registered branch of that agent. So we will train their staff as well. So the internal business model for us is not that much of a concern. Our concern is if it's a franchise or it's a owned office, the quality of the
someone should take onus.
Yeah, responsibility and advice is given in a proper way.
Fair point, and good to see that what you are talking is you're also not only preaching but in action. And in fact, men of few words for sure. Getting access of you is like, for me, it's like okay, we are doing okay. If Abizer is coming and Abizer is talking to you and also he's interested of what you are doing, it seems that we are doing the ethical thing, and also at the same time we are doing volumes, and making intent. But coming back to your point, you mentioned that you went to an agent, you knew one university name, and you in your mind you have chosen Australia as a country. You've been in the ecosystem for 20 years. Let's say tomorrow when my daughter gonna be at 18, and she wants to go for undergrad or postgrad. So two questions: should, as per you, individual or as a university, should student pursue undergrad from India and postgrad from international, or they should choose undergrad or postgrad from other way around? And then second, should they choose country first, course first, or a university first?
So to be honest, it's a hard one because every student's profile is never the same. No two students are the same. Now if you look at my own situation as well, where for me, being from a well-to-do family, finances was not that much of an issue. I could have gone for undergrad and it would have been okay. But I think at undergrad, I wasn't ready. I was 17 or 18. I don't think I was ready, mentally to be on my own and manage things on my own. Maybe I was a bit, kind of pampered at home. So, all of that kind of thing. But so it really depends upon your circumstances and when you're ready, your finances. I mean, finances is a huge thing now. I mean, it always is. And things are expensive, I mean, when I went to Australia, students are now paying at least 7 to 8 times more than what I paid, so things have gone really, really expensive. But more than that, the cost of living. but that's a separate topic. So I think whether it's UG or PG, whether you decide to go undergrad or postgrad is really a decision based on, first of all, are you ready? That are you mature enough at 17 or 18 to take responsibility for yourself, your life, your accommodation, your academic performance, all of those things, right? That's one thing. The second thing is, the finances, which we spoke about. 3 years or 4 years is more expensive than studying 1 or 2 years at master's level. So that's another thing. The third thing I would really kind of get students to think about is that if you're going for an undergrad degree, is that same degree offered in your home country at a similar kind of quality, right? And do you really need to go abroad at the undergrad level if something of similar or as good value is offered locally, right? Now, if let's say you're doing something which is not established in India or doesn't have very strong kind of programs which are there in India, then by all means, if you have the resources to go abroad and to do it. But I think postgrad becomes interesting because by then you have the maturity to understand that this is what I want to do in life. This is what I want to see and what I like doing. Because at 17 or 18, there are very few people who actually know what they're going to do for the rest of their life. Like, I'm a trained accountant at undergrad. I'm doing nothing in accounting right now. But those skills have stayed with me.
No, you must be using your account.
You use it in finance or whatever.
To count your money.
Of course. So,
or invest your money.
Budgets. Or budgets, University budgets are managed that way. So those skills stay with you. But I'm not doing anything which I
studied, trained for 3 years.
Yeah, so most people at undergrad level, I would say most, but some people, land up doing courses which they not necessarily will they pursue that as a career later in life. But those skills start to stay with them, right? So at the master level, what happens is you're 21, 22, you've seen a bit more of life. You may have worked for 1 or 2 years, and you've seen the reality of work compared to study. And then you make a decision. I think you're making a far more informed decision at that time because you have more life experience. So I get really worried when I meet 17-year-old students who are absolutely sure, saying that I want to do cybersecurity or I want to do AI. And many times you ask them, what is AI? And they're not able to articulate it.
They have pseudo understanding.
They just heard it from somewhere.
It's a buzzword.
So that becomes, and then you start studying and realizing, what, I actually would prefer to do media and communications or be a journalist or something of that sort. I'm in the wrong field. So that becomes problematic. But then there are also students who are absolutely sure. The levels of maturity are different. So your mental, are you ready? Is what I first thing said was, are you ready? And are you sure of what you want to do? And if you're not sure also and you want to go, I would say choose programs which will stay with the skills, stay with you. And I think in those ways, right, I think, for example, law, even if you don't become a lawyer, right, the understanding of how law works and the way lawyers think is quite a unique skill, right? So if you don't become a lawyer, that's fine. But all your life, whatever you're doing, you will be reading legal documents.
Right, absolutely.
So it's a skill that will stay with you. And it's a skill about how to understand the law, whether it's in Australia or India, is a very key skill to learn. So law is one thing. People don't look at law at all as a career.
As a skills also.
As a skill,
In fact, absolutely, I always keep saying now, you should have one lawyer, one doctor, one engineer, and probably one IAS as your fast dial friends or family. In India, at least you need these 4.
And the other thing I would say is, I'm biased because I did a marketing degree, but if you do an undergrad marketing degree, everyone is a salesman. Whether you're a professional or you're a doctor or you're a dentist or whatever you are, everyone has to at some point market or sell themselves to get business.
Totally true.
Right? So those skills which you learn in marketing will also stay with you. Even if you don't get into media or, in a marketing job, it will stay with you because you need to understand how your customer thinks.
Absolutely.
Right.
See, nothing go wasted. I always keep saying. In fact, just to anecdote, and I'm so enjoying this, because people say you don't talk. I'm like, who
I'm talking too much right now.
No, and because you're talking sense, and I want to listen to you more, right? But just to add to it, I did economics honors because I started scoring good in 9th in economics. I'm like, I need to do economics. I'm doing well. I'm scoring it. I'm good at it. I need to be economist. I took economics in 9th, 12th. I've been acing it, topping it. Then I have to do economics honors in Delhi University. But when I realized in my undergrad, in the first year I realized that I will not make a good economist. my numbers were not that great at that point in time. But nothing was wasted.
Nothing.
Whatever I
economics is a very
studied.
good skill to learn.
Absolutely.
And economics is there in everything you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Coming back to, and I counter your point, that I it seems that you are a bit more biased towards student going for postgrad because you want your students to have a better ROI, don't waste money, because you come from a background wherein, you're very, very ethical. I know, like, you will not shy away to say no if you believe it's not right for the student. But what if want my kid to settle in Australia, because I don't want them to be in India or in my home country. For some reason, I believe my kid or the kid wants to probably do a sports management or do a professional cricketer, and they see their career and their way of living, in that destination country, or in this example probably Australia. Do you still think that if you're looking for immigration in a right way, with spending time and money and paying taxes, still someone going for postgrad versus undergrad, don't you think someone going for undergrad, spending 5 years, understanding the nuances, will have a higher chances to get their immigration or their visas versus someone going for postgrad?
So if you see what's happening right now, let's say in Australia, for example, I don't want to cover the other markets which are also, skill-oriented systems. But in Australia, what they're really looking for is the right skills, right? So when you apply for any kind of immigrant visa, long-term visa, a permanent visa, on a skill migration basis, there's something called a skill assessment, where a professional body comes in and assesses your skills, right? Now, there's no bias over there that of undergrad or postgrad. In fact, in Australia, we're actually seeing now that for some of the the work visas, the long-term visas as well, a little bit higher in the age category, you're actually getting more points, right? So there's a bit of that also
Very
happening.
interesting.
So what I'm trying to say, right, is
Very
that
interesting.
if you're ready at 16 or 18,
Right.
and you can go abroad and you know what you want to do, you're going to do something unique, you thought it out properly, definitely go. I would never discourage anyone from going abroad, whether it's undergrad or postgrad. My only concern is at 16 or 18, you want to be careful on your course selection and then the finances, right? So if finance is not a problem, you understood, you're mentally prepared for it, all of that, that's great. I've seen it, but I was there, students who at postgrad or undergrad, both. Even postgrad students, there are plenty of them who are not ready for it. So it's not like it's an undergrad bias. I would say I've seen plenty of postgrad students, 21, 22 years old, who are not ready to live on their own, or don't have that, mental kind of, they're not ready to, live on their own kind of, or make the decisions on their own. So, in terms of undergrad, what I was trying to say really is that be clear on what you're trying to do, and rather than following a herd mentality system that everyone's going abroad, so I should be going.
Very interesting.
So I think that should be the nuance. There should be some independent thinking about the person, about themselves, about the course they're studying, and then make a really clear decision on that. From an immigration point of view, I actually don't think it makes a major difference whether you're doing an undergrad degree or a postgrad degree, as long as your skills align with what that country wants later on.
Very interesting and good to have your perspective. And I believe, all these podcasts, whether it will help my audience or anyone, it will definitely helping me making a better choice for faith. Just that, as I said, nothing was wasted, because I'm also keep thinking and discussing with Bhavna and, my family that I'm the questioning, traditional school versus home tutoring. I'm questioning, why they want to go abroad. And why should not they go abroad even as early as possible if you can manage it, then I'm also questioning, and we all talk about lots of AI coming in, and then we also talk about the value of agent and physical one-on-one with all the technology coming in, and we are a tech platform, right? So I always say that technology without human touch is waste. We've been developing lots of AI, lots of technology, lots of platforms, AR, VR, but we still have a large team. And lots of people, lots of my investors, lots of my counterparts are asking why you need a 400 people team. And we discussed that offline and probably online also. You have a team. You've been recruiting so many qualitative students, meeting so many agents. You are always thin and thick of action and attending Indian international conferences. What's your view on AI taking traditional counseling versus do you think the brick and mortar franchisee or a branch model is the right model and continue to grow versus all these platforms and including us, wherein they are growing fast, but at the same time they have some challenges.
Yeah.
So what's your view on this?
So
AI
I think,
versus human?
Yeah, I think it's a level of complexity of the decision making, right? So, for example, if you look at the whole application process, right, from applying to university, selection of university, destination, country, visa, accommodation, all of that. If you combine all of those into one process, right, that's a very complex and multiple decision points for a student. And the decision making is still going on right till after they accepted the offer, got a visa, then they have to select where they're going to go and live, right? So they're still making decisions right towards till the end in that process. I think the human touch, where there is complexity there, AI can essentially, for example, let's look at ChatGPT, for example, right? It can very seamlessly within seconds, collect information from multiple sources and put it in one place, for you. But how do you get a testimonial of a current student who's studying in Australia with a live experience of being in that university or in that country to capture that, right? So I think that's where the human element becomes very important. And we talked about before as well that it's life-changing.
Yeah.
For a life-changing situation, think of it this. Let's say if you were buying a really top car, right? Let's say you're buying a Bentley or Rolls Royce, for example, right? You're unlikely to go online and you'll see the model online, but you're going to want to talk to other Bentley owners, right? You're also going to want to know who are these people who drive Bentleys. Right? One of the reasons why people buy a Rolls Royce or a Bentley is because you're getting membership of a club, and you want to know who that club is, right? So if you see many organizations now, there's a big move, even from a restaurant for that matter, is collecting your data to form a club, where they can engage with you directly and people are like-minded, kind of thing coming together. So I think that's where AI probably has limitations where it's great for gathering a lot of information, synthesizing it and putting it in front of you without you having to go to, let's say, 10 different websites and search it up, right? So it has that ability to really synthesize information and bring it to you in one shot. So it will reduce the amount of time that you spend on, let's say, mundane activities or activities which are manual. But, how do you get the human touch then from that?
No, totally. Totally. Just a counter to this, right? And we'll then talk about living expenses and cost of living, and we'll go to my favorite subject, accommodation, right? And I'm trying to be pseudo-intellectual here, right? So please, either counter it or join the bandwagon. Do you think 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, people actually need to go to colleges and pursue degree when everything is online, everything is on YouTube? I always say now, it's not the answer now, it's about the question. The people who are asking the right question are probably not being lazy to ask questions and thinking.
Yeah.
They will continue to grow, not people who have the answers. Because for answer, you have ChatGPTs and DeepSeek and whatnot. What's your view on the future of higher education? Students, alphas, would like to pursue their undergrad and postgrads? If yes, will they want to do in-person setup or probably hybrid or only online?
So if you see what's happening now, let's say, for example, in Australia, there's a huge online market for postgraduate education. When people are at work, they can't leave work and attend classes, or they have families, so they can't come in the evening for classes, right? So online kind of works really well for that circumstance.
Professional and
working
upgrade, upskilling,
working professionals, it works beautifully, right? I think it has its market and over there.
Good point.
Now, let's say for the undergraduate level, right, when you're 18 years old, if you're doing a degree completely online, right, and that's the age when you build your networks, right? Now, I'm not saying you can't build a network online. You can build it.
Right? But that will be,
that will be virtual. There's no human touch. You can't go. I mean, for example,
that we already have Facebook and social medias and LinkedIn to have that online connect. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think what I'm trying to say is that it's what stage and what your circumstance is what you want to do, right? So now in India we have a unique challenge where the demand for education and the supply is not matching, and the rate at which we're adding universities, physical universities, is not going to keep up with the way students are coming in the demand, right? So online has to be a big part of what we do, whether it's new degrees, upskilling, reskilling, everything.
Does Macquarie got an online offering?
So
that's where your bias?
No. So in terms of we have a very small online presence, but what we do have embedded into many of our degrees is the hybrid version we spoke about. So what we've realized also in many of our programs is that we don't need to fill 300 people into a lecture theatre, which is a lecturer coming and providing, textbook of factual information, which they need to know, where there is no need for engagement, right? So that can be done online, right? But when it's about critical thinking, questions, digging deeper, that's where you want to bring people in smaller groups into a face-to-face environment, right? I think that's
very
important.
Nice. Very nice. Do you think there's a model wherein, the basic stuff can be learned online and your queries, your questions should be discussed in person? But the fact is, now at 40, at least I've done 40. I know you are younger than that. At 40, I'm questioning that why I was not smart enough or curious enough to ask questions. And even that 20 years back, there were enough information online. There were Wikipedias and whatnot. But probably that network, that curiosity of people around, which have made me push to ask more questions, to seek more answers, and thinking hard, which is making us smarter, I would say wiser, right? At 20, probably I was directionless, or I didn't have a circle, which probably I'm blessed to have now, which is making me question that why we need to go to schools and classes. Today's in hyper connected world, I can connect anyone on LinkedIn and people are there to help. I mean, I just had a call which is like one of the very hotshot guy, and he just said yes on WhatsApp and came for 45 minutes call, which probably have not learned that kind of 45 minutes learning in my entire MBA into my finance classes.
Right.
But I guess the lack of motivation, the lack of direction, the lack of people are not self-driven and hence they need to go to classes and universities. Also,
I'll tell you something, and this is my experience at school, which I kind of reflect upon later. But I didn't know what was happening when I was in school, and I'm 46, so I was 6-year lead on you in terms of schooling and the rest. But so when I went to school, right, the teacher stood in the front of the classroom, gave instructions, a lecture, and left. Right? Now, there used to be one kid in my class who was extremely curious and he always asked questions. And he's also obviously very, very intelligent. But he was...
ridiculed.
No, teachers told him to pipe down.
Yeah, exactly. Or even in some cases, ridiculed. That, he or she is asking a question because they need attention.
Yeah.
But it's probably because of the curiosity. But
yeah. So the thing is, I feel that schooling I had, for example, the curiosity was beaten out of us, right? So we were programmed to accept instruction for the person who's leading the class and not question it, right? And that frame of mind, right, gets kind of hardwired over time. And to break from it, right, was what broke for me was in Australia. Because when I went to class over there,
right,
if the academic found that no one is asking questions, he wondered whether anyone's listening or anyone is making sense to anyone. So when questions were being asked, he was able to gauge what is the level of understanding and engagement with the material, right? So it's a very different kind of thinking.
Wow,
right?
This is such a gold.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that it's beaten out of us.
Yeah, because this is a goal not only from classes. We have half an hour, 1.5, 2 hours for meetings with 20, 30 people. And at the end of the meeting, there were no questions. It shows that probably there was no engagement and no one's thinking.
Yeah.
So true. Yeah. Over to you. Yeah.
I think just in terms of the curiosity part of it, right, is that unfortunately, we're now seeing it where people who are adults, when they look at the media, for example, in India, or they see WhatsApp, or our parents see WhatsApp, for example, Like I have to keep telling my parents that
It's not true.
most of the stuff you're seeing on WhatsApp, 99% of it is fake. It's rubbish, right? But they come from a system which is probably worse than mine, where they were not allowed to think critically.
Yeah.
So I think critical thinking, right, is a very important skill, which, to be honest, I learned that only in Australia. Where I had to say, really, is that really true? Let's test that. So and I think that's now changing in India, where we need to encourage our children to ask those questions, no matter how stupid it is.
Yeah.
But the moment we start saying, "Boss, bol ho gaya, zyada bol rahe ho,"
We're not helping them.
we're not helping them.
And in fact, we all have read, no question is stupid. Only stupid question is no other question asked.
Yeah.
And that's why, I envy today's kid. People have money. People also have time because they don't have 5-10 kids, right? And somehow with modern parenting, it's a soft parenting, so people are listening and answering their kids, and that's why they are becoming smarter. You want to ask any question to us, to me, to University Living, about university, anything, because I believe it's just not my right to ask questions,
So I didn't come prepared with really, I came prepared to answer. But, I guess probably for me it would be interesting to know what challenges you face when dealing with, multiple education providers, have different kinds of infrastructure. Some have on campus, some don't have accommodation, some are open to it, some are not really doing it. So how do you kind of position yourself in that situation?
Very interesting. Very interesting. I mean, this is a question which can have a full podcast, but I'll try to in a couple of minutes I'll try to answer. I believe there's a problem, hence we exist, right? And it's such a good position to be in. Everyone used to know about housing, but people used to stay quiet or mum purposely, or probably they don't have a solution, or don't have a time, or probably it was not their KRA. So previously I was I was used to question that, no, you talk student experience, you talk student first, but what you don't help about housing. I used to argue with lots of education partners that you are talking with student first, you're talking with student experience, but 80% students don't get on campus, right? 80% of your time you spend where you stay, with people you stay, not at classes. You find your soulmates, your roommates, your business partners with people you stay, and then still people are not talking about housing. And then I realized that why I'm not talking about finances, or why I'm not talking about education loans, because that's not my core, right? But at the same time, there were also lack of information. There were lack of awareness. Rather than me assuming and complaining that people are not ready to take this solution, let's create awareness. That's where this report, the Australia reports and all the reports we are doing every quarter, we thought let's not be someone who only blame and complain. Let's become part of the solution. So the reports came in, and there were better awareness. That's where this podcast is same. I mean, we are not doing for views or news or even monetizing it. There's no sponsor. We are looking for sponsor, but there's no sponsor, right? We never thought this way. But now when we go to universities, we understand their viewpoint. There are lots of universities who already have enough accommodation, and students are happy staying on campus. But then there are also institutions probably, they don't have a bandwidth or they don't have a solution, or they never thought about this. And now when we go to them, and we tell them that, okay, we are not only do premium accommodation, we do budget also. We not only do long term, we do flexible also. We not only cater to one destination, we have a multi-destination, from Vegas to Auckland, we are covered, So now there's a better adoption. We are on lots of university websites, lots of university invite for their pre-departure, offer order sessions, want to participate in our reports, podcasts, So definitely very proud that in our little way, creating a category. It took me 15 years, to be in a position where people are at least talking and thinking about it. But challenges are there were, and there will be. There will be challenges where even there are institutions who are we have 500 rooms or we have 500 students, we'll be able to accommodate. So now I'm creating capacity. That can we have full buildings where we can manage. Rather than just a listing platform or a marketplace, can I become an operator? Once we become operator, there are different challenges. So, I guess that's the beauty, right? There are challenges, and every challenge got a solution.
Of course.
It might take time. It might take more financial, capabilities, but slowly and surely we are reaching there.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is just carrying on from what we spoke about before. This is not a question for you, but more of a comment from me. I have a great appreciation for people who start their own business, whether they succeed or whether they fail. Just the idea that you're willing to take on the risk and the fact that you're willing to, put a lot at stake, including your personal life.
No personal life.
Shows a lot of shows a lot of passion. And I have great appreciation, for that. So, like, great job what you're doing, and wish you all the best and success as well.
Thank you. Industry and people have been very kind. I also take a bit of credit that probably we are not in hurry. And we want to be very clear that we want to create value.
Yeah.
And it takes time. It takes efforts. It takes persistence.
Yeah.
But if you're doing the right thing and not easy thing, sooner or later the good work is spread like fire. But thank you for your comments and your encouragement. But can we talk about Australia education system? Because I mean, there are so much of learning. In fact, whenever I meet you, and I keep picking your brains and ask questions, because not to show that, oh, I'm interested, but there's a curiosity. Because few days back we were doing with Jugnu, New Zealand engagement director. So I got to learn a lot about New Zealand as a destination. Australia is very close to me. I don't know if you're aware. When I started my first company, New Lodges, so we were doing UK. Then I moved out, I kicked out, and then I started university living. So we started Australia as a destination, right? I believe I have decent understanding on Australia, but then I meet you, then I meet Monica, then I meet Vic, then I meet so many. I mean, I have so much of Rikas Ravi and Sushil, and then I get to know, oh, I only know this much, So anything, everything which you want to talk about educational ecosystem, or your journey, about Australia. Let's say if someone want to see this segment and they want to decode Australia as a destination, for whether it's a student, whether it's an education partner, parents, or even any stakeholder who want to grow and scale in Australia.
Right. So, I mean, let's maybe choose one. Let's say, for example, I mean, we spoke a lot about, education agents, as well. So you made the question before as well about, how does someone who's new enter this market, right? I mean, it's so hard. Now, the reality is that this is now an established market, right? So there are certain players who've been there for 25, 30 years. Like in any other sector, any other industry, you'll find that they're established players and they will raise the barriers for entry for new players, right? So, in fact, in our, if you look at the agency network, we're also seeing now the big fish buying out the small fish.
I know who we're talking about.
So, we're seeing all of that.
Even that person will be on podcast on Saturday.
Right,
Go ahead.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, that's like, kind of a corporate kind of takeover kind of thing, So, like any other business, a lot of people have entered and have departed eventually because they come with the wrong intentions, and I just think when you're working with students, when you're working with education, life-changing stuff we spoke about, you need to have a service mentality. You need to have an idea that what you're doing, what you're saying, or what you're selling is life-changing, or it can also destroy a person's life, right? If you give the bad advice. And I think a lot of people or, newcomers into this are looking at this, oh, look at the amount of money that's what potentially can be made and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But they're not realizing that the ethical nature of this
industry,
or I don't want to call it a business, but, is that there's a lot at stake here for the person involved. Like, for example, if you're going to buy a car and you choose the wrong car, you don't like it. Fine, we'll just buy another car, or we just, with 3-4 years, you'll drive it and we'll sell it. Right? But if you're in the wrong study destination. Right?
No, even with car, if you'd say at the right time, if there's no brakes get applied, your life is at risk.
Exactly. So, for newcomers, it's really important that you enter the business with the right framework in mind, that you're entering a business primarily, one, yes, we want to make money for sure. Everybody needs to make money and needs to pay the bills, pay their employees. But also, you're also thinking of it from the point of view that, as you said, there is a need, there is a problem, right? Like you're addressing a certain problem around accommodation that maybe universities don't provide enough, or you can do better. So you're addressing a problem, right? Now, the question I have for someone who enters the market is, do we need one more agent in the market? Is there a need for one more agent? Is there a market which is underserviced? And the question to that is yes. There are parts of India which are underserviced. So there are certain, So let's say if you go to tier 2, tier 3 cities, right? Now if you see India's growth story as well, it's coming mainly from tier 2, tier 3, right? The established cities are there, they are as they are. But there's no shortage of selling BMWs to people in Bhopal and Indore.
Yeah.
They don't. It's not like they have less.
In fact, probably Meerut got more BMWs. I won't say Noida, but at least some part of the Delhi or NCR. Yeah.
So I think it's important first to find your niche. Maybe you don't want to go where everyone is going because this place is now it's full, right? Or they don't need, it's saturated. So maybe finding the right cities where you think you can add value, that there is a need, or you're addressing a problem there that students in this city are being forced to travel to the next major city because wahan pe koi hai nahi.
Good point.
Right, so that's one thing where you want to look at tier 2, tier 3, new markets. And it's not like there's less demand in those places, right? So it's not like there's less need for those things over there. So that's one thing. Second thing is be open to the idea of starting small, right? Now the thing is, everybody who enters the market comes with sometimes with VC funding and all of that, and wants to go and get every possible university under the sun in their first year of opening business. You haven't built any credentials. You haven't built any reputation.
Good point.
Right. So for a university, let's say for me, who I've worked with some agents like you mentioned, Ravi, Sushil, these guys have been there for 30 years, in the business. Right. Why would someone who walks through the door with no experience, only with VC funding, saying to me that I want to be your agent? So my thinking is, for example, let's say, and let's use the example of, let's say, Ravi or Sushil or whoever. They have a model where they have their own offices, and their offices are owned by them as well. They make those investments across India and South Asia. Now he's doing all of that. He's spending money on sending his counselors to Australia, be training. He's investing all of that. Now let's say I hire 2-3 more agents in one of his major markets or major cities. All I'm doing over there for him or for myself is that the market for Macquarie is 20 students in that city. Let's say Ravi was recruiting all those 20 so far. If I had 2 more agents in that city, I'll still get 20. But Ravi will send me now 10 or 15, and the remaining will send me the remaining 5. So I don't actually made any business, I did any new business over here. Now, if that same person, let's say, goes to somewhere in the Northeast, for example, Guwahati, I won't say it's underserviced, but for example, right? Now I'm saying, well, you know what? I don't have anyone there, or there's not much activity happening there. So now I look at that person and say, okay, you know what? Let's see what this guy is about. Right? So what are you bringing to the table? Are you offering me the same thing which is being offered by everyone else? Or have you got something else to, like any other business?
Very, very true.
Right? So I think a lot of people who enter this market come with that thinking that let's pour money into this and it will do well.
Now, if you want to work with Macquarie, don't expect to get them the first year. But, I mean, the horse is saying itself, probably if I want to get into recruitment, which I will not, I don't think I will be getting recruitment. I will invest and open an office in Meerut or a Guwahati or a Siliguri. And I know a few of the partners got, just for saying it, I'm saying that will be you will get a better stand. And it's so logical also. It's so logical, no? Right? Why you want to be in the same pond where the fish are limited and then cut fishes and do wrong things. So true. So true. What else?
So I think also when it comes specifically to Australia, I think a lot of them need to take the effort to understand Australia's education system, its quality framework, its universities. We have far fewer universities than, let's say, UK or the US. We only have about 42, 43, universities compared to, hundreds of universities in other countries, in the UK or in the US. So we're dealing with a far fewer number of universities. Many of them are in regional cities, which have a completely different experience compared to living, let's say, in a metropolitan city like Melbourne or Sydney. So I think they need to make that effort of understanding, that the nuances of this market are quite different. In terms of, I know a lot of students, and we should, call a spade, is that a lot of students come with the idea that, they would like to migrate. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with it, yes.
Right? As long as you follow the rules and you do it in the right manner. But to market yourself to a student to say, you do this program and you get migration, that's where the problem starts.
Yeah. And I also won't only blame agents, even the students.
Yeah.
I mean, this is so important that, the thing wrong with seeking immigration, but don't have the wrong expectation. If you want immigration, then probably, and you're going to Australia, then you need to have time and you need to focus on your skills. If you have skills, it will be a byproduct.
Right.
But if you don't have skills and you're just another, pardon my language, taxi driver, why will that economy or a university would like to recommend you for a visa? If you want to do something like that, probably go to a emerging market where probably that skill is needed.
Yeah.
It's so logical. I mean, everything you are saying, is making sense and it's so logical.
Yeah. The reality of finding work, if I can be very, very honest, right, is yes, your degree plays an important role. Let's say you've chosen a degree which is of the skills are highly required. Yes. But I think on top of that, it sits on top of all of that from an employer perspective is the soft skills. Right. And we tend to really kind of downgrade that or don't pay enough attention to it, because if you can't join an organization or you go to an interview and you can't express a complex concept to an employer, and you don't have the soft skills to present or to put forward your ideas, no matter how well skilled you are, technically inclined you are, unless it's a job which doesn't require to engage with anyone and just be the back and not do anything and sit on your own, which are very few jobs where you don't require any human interaction. But you're not going to find a job, right? So I think what I found is the ones who succeeded quickly, irrespective of their degree, are the ones who've had very strong communication, very strong soft skills at the end of their program. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they engaged with their program. They're engaged with the network, whether it's academics or students, while they were studying. So I always tell this to students is that your search for a job doesn't start after you graduate. It starts when you start studying. Because you have to build your networks when you start studying itself. Yeah. Whether it's students, whether it's academics, whether it's professional staff in the university, outside, where you're doing a part-time work or whatever, put yourself out there. You've come from India, you have no network in Australia. All your networks are here. Your dad can call up someone and say, usko laga do, give him a job, whatever. There's none of that going to happen over there. It won't work, right? So you have to build it on your own. So I think that's, one thing where I think, let's say someone who's entering the market, for example, an agent as well, you start thinking about is also that, fine.
Adding that different, more to the...
Yeah, where can we add value to this entire process? Can we help the student make the right choice? Is important, because if they make the right choice, it's likely things will fall in place for them later on, as well. So I think, and I'm not seeing a lot of that which is coming my way. In terms of new agents, they just pretty much look like the last one who came before. So yeah.
So interesting. And this is my learning, right? You do India and you do Sri Lanka. What is the difference between Sri Lankan mindset, if any, and Indian students and Sri Lankan students, and even education agents or over ecosystem?
Yeah. So India and Sri Lanka are definitely different markets. In fact, I would say India is also not one market. If you think about it, the north, the south, east, the west are all very different. In terms of what their needs and wants are. But if you can talk about Sri Lanka, so Sri Lanka, strangely, or I would say in a good way, is a primarily undergraduate market. It is now growing postgraduate wise as well. Postgraduate.
Why so?
Undergrad, in terms of why?
Yeah, why is it undergrad? That's an interesting thing.
So there is, I don't know the exact statistics around this, but there is a major mismatch that after you finish schooling in Sri Lanka, the number of university spots available, there is a major mismatch. Right, so if you go to see...
So there is an opportunity to open a university in Sri Lanka?
There's opportunity...
I'm thinking of business mind...
From an accommodation point of view?
No, just opening a university.
So there are actually, that's what's going to come to, is that if you see in Australia, there are multiple providers who have opened and are delivering there already for that same reason.
TNEs and...
Transnational pathway programs, diplomas, degrees, everything, right? Because there is a shortage. Right, that's one of the primary reasons as well. In the last few years, mainly also, there's been a situation where they've had financial trouble and the lack of opportunity, will drive young people away.
Is not,
young people will, want to go for better opportunities elsewhere as well. But Sri Lankan students, they generally, they are culturally different, definitely culturally different from us. It is a relatively smaller market. From India.
So it's more like if you want to draw a parallel of Sri Lanka to one of the state in India, is that a fair evaluation or a fair point to make?
So I'll tell you something is that compared to India, the main difference would be is that Sri Lankans tend to cluster in Melbourne. Melbourne tends to be the most important market for them. But that's also because the Melbourne-based providers were amongst the first to enter
It's
the
like
market.
that community building.
The first mover advantage, as well as almost all the universities in Melbourne have a pathway program in Sri Lanka, in Colombo, which is feeding students to them. So if you look at Monash, La Trobe, Swinburne, Deakin, they all have pathway programs, in Sri Lanka. So that's because of that. So there is a big Sri Lankan community there, a smaller, much smaller community in Sydney. So there is that one difference. As I mentioned, undergrad.
And for Indians, it's Sydney?
Sydney, I don't think we have a good spread, I feel. I mean, there is a Melbourne bias.
Melbourne is Delhi and Sydney is Mumbai or...
I don't think I think it's chalk and cheese over there as well, because even Sydney and Melbourne are quite different.
Right.
So Sydney and Mumbai would be, because coastal cities, financial capitals, all of that has a bit of a match.
Right. And Melbourne is Delhi.
Melbourne tends to be more sports and cultural capital of Australia, but also a major business hub. Ironically, Melbourne is growing faster than Sydney, so it will become eventually a bigger city than Sydney. So right now Sydney is bigger. So that will change in the next few years as well. But, in terms of Sri Lanka, going back to Sri Lanka as well, I don't think the immigration
mindset
is there as entrenched as it is in some parts of India. A lot of them are happy to come back.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. What's your view on accommodation, and how is also, unlike many other guests, you've not spoken about Macquarie. We want to talk about Macquarie, how it's different, and what's your take on accommodation for Macquarie and also otherwise?
Look, let's talk about accommodation. Macquarie, they can see the website.
You're so confident with your brand that you don't need to promote it.
Well, I don't think it's that.
Or your numbers are already done for like next 5 years.
No, it's not. It's nothing of that. I just think accommodation is a more relevant thing, and the reason I'm saying that also is because a lot of students who at this point now will come to us saying, I haven't got my visa, I need a visa extension letter, right? And I actually kind of think back on my own days. If I had arrived 2 to 4 weeks late for my classes, where I'm behind classes, I don't have a place to stay, right? You're entering a new country with no network. You're going to have a very bad start because you're not settled at home, and neither you settled at work at university or whatever, right? So I always tell them that first thing you do, even if you're a migrant into Australia, is settle your home first, because at the end of the day, you'll have trouble at university, you'll have trouble at work, whatever you're doing in Australia. But you want to come back to a safe place. You want to come back to a place where things are settled and you're not sleeping on the floor and you don't have any kind of facility to cook or to.
Your accommodation is your first touch point. Once you land, you will not go to university. You will go to a place and that will determine lots of things. Where do you stay? How do you stay? Whom you stay? That define your next network. So please.
No, absolutely. It's just very simple things, So, but I think a lot of students discount that, and I find that when we're doing pre-departure sessions, which is a few weeks before they're going to leave, some of them still haven't decided where they're going to live. So, we'll go there and we'll stay in a hotel for some time, and then we'll look for private accommodation, or then I have a friend there who I think I can stay with for some time. I was like, this is the most important part, and as you said, the first touch point when you arrive. So you really want to sort that out before you go. So one thing we do actually at Macquarie is that we actually have someone at Macquarie who sends out, closer to the intake, a weekly update on our stock levels. Right, so when we're talking to students, we know where there is availability or there is none. And to be honest, by the time we reach 3-4 weeks before, everything is gone. Right, so and that's why for us also, we know if you've chosen to come to Macquarie and you're coming, decide your accommodation, whether it's on campus, off campus, private, whatever you're doing. Decide where you're going to live, because that's really going to be quite influential in your experience in Australia. And I've seen a lot of my friends when I studied as well who didn't have appropriate accommodation, and it became a very bad experience for them. To be honest, even though the university was great, but they left Australia after 1 or 2 years with a bad taste in their mouth, because they were with the wrong people in the wrong place, not appropriate accommodation for whatever it was. And Because, at the end of the day, you may go to university 3 to 4 days a week.
Yeah, exactly.
But you have to come home every day. So,
Absolutely.
So you really want to sort that stuff out first before you try and, find a part-time work. Or, when students first arrive, they come with their bags to the reception. And the first thing they're asking us is, how do I apply for a part-time job? How do I get a tax file number? I'm like, boss, saas le lo. Start with that. And then first find a place to live. You don't have a place to live. You want to find part-time work. And I totally understand the reason behind that, because many of them are taking bank loans and they have interest payments. They're trying to reduce the burden on their parents. And those are all very good, honorable things to do. But you want to do it in a systematic and a structured way where you're prepared that if I come on time or if I come late also, I have a place to go. And then things will fall from there, whether it's academics, work, or whatever it is,
But why still the majority of stakeholders still not, most of people are now aware of the problem. Or they also know there's a solution. But still that thumping acceptance that you need to apply for finances.
Yeah, I'll tell you something, and this is something which has happened in the last 6 to 8 months since we had trouble with getting visas on time. One thing we noticed, and this feedback we're getting from our agents as well, is that, and this could be peculiar to us, to Australia, is that a lot of students delay the decision making around Australia, around applying for a visa. Everything is done
Last 2 months.
2 months.
Max.
But if you look at students who are going to other countries,
US is 12 months.
They do 12 months in advance planning, right? Yeah. So the problem is the planning cycle is so short that everything is being done in a rush, right? So that's the problem, I think. So what's happening now, and you saw this for the first time, is that many universities
November they
closed
have,
by end of 30th November saying no more applications. So you have December, Jan and Feb, 3 months to get a visa, right? So we've trying to push the cycle forward. Because for us, what you've noticed, many students who come late, the chances of attrition is very high.
Attrition also,
Because they haven't settled.
For that student, that university or that country is not part of a choice.
More than choice, I think it's more about that they're not ready. They're not settled, right? They come 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, the visa is delayed, or whatever.
The attrition will be
high. They're not going to do well academically because they missed 3 weeks of classes. They haven't made any friends. The accommodation may or may not be settled, right? So you're entering a situation in a new country.
You're planning to fail.
You're pretty much set up to fail, right? So, and that's why, many universities, including Macquarie, we close 2 weeks. That's it. That's as far as we go. And then you just get deferred to the next intake. You come to the next intake. Because every 6 months we have an intake anyway. Some universities have 3 intakes a year. So
you have 2.
We have Feb and July.
Feb and July.
But many universities have October as well.
But mostly it's Feb and July.
Feb is the main intakes,
Feb is the main, no?
October now has become for main, I think many universities do it for their high volume programs. But then there's a certain university which have a tri-semester program. That means everything's offered 3 times a year. So it is different in different ways. But we are still very Feb and July oriented. But that's what we do, is that if you can't come in Feb, then 2 weeks later, you're automatically deferred to the next intake. We won't wait anymore or allow you to come anymore. So,
very interesting. Very interesting. Great. I guess we have discussed a lot, and this is the last bit, which is rapid fire.
It's like a Karan Johar kind of thing, right? Rapid fire.
Without the hamper. Only the lunch.
That's plenty. So.
And, when I told my team and few of my friends that, Abizer is coming. So make him cookie. He speak less, which I will not agree now, right? And he speak he's always been serious, right? So, so this is for that point of view. So, if your career was a Netflix series, what would it be titled as?
0 to 100.
Nice. If you had to create a student's survivor kit for international students, what 3 things would you put in it?
One is where to find accommodation.
Okay.
Most important. Second would be where to go for help if you have trouble, whether it's SOS or where to go for help. And the third thing was to give them a list of our authorized agents.
I will add a universal charger. Today people might not have money, but they need their phone to be charged, and because everything on phone.
Yeah.
What's a marketing idea so crazy, and you're a marketer, you would love to try it but haven't yet?
Ambush marketing.
Okay. What's one small habit that can make a big difference in a student's life?
Planning.
What's the funniest misconception people have about your job?
That's actually a good question. misconception of my job is that it's all sales
It's all sales.
and there's nothing else to it. Yeah.
And we only live in 5 stars and having best of the flights.
I mean, that's the many industries, but they think it's all sales. There's nothing more to it. Yeah.
What's a professional oops moment that still makes you laugh? See, and I want to read that out. My team asked that only ask this question if he's a fun person.
Okay,
See, this is the
perfect.
perception you have
Yeah.
from people. But
Yeah.
me being me, we have no filters. What's a professional oops moment that still makes you laugh? Like I had, right? Just for camera, I met him and I don't know why I introduced him for UNSW. And he was so kind. He like, Saurabh, Macquarie. So that's my oops moment. But
So, in fact, I was just going to say something similar because I purposely said it to you softly because I didn't want to embarrass you simply because I've made a very bigger mistake on the same lines. So after 10 years at La Trobe, I was presenting for the first time at Macquarie to a very senior group. And in the entire presentation, I said, La Trobe needs to do this for 1 hour. And no one corrected me.
Wow.
And told me at the end that, by the way, you said La Trobe. So the reason why I said it quietly to you was because I know how it feels.
Whoa, oh man. But it's also the other way to see it. You were so passionate about La Trobe. Probably many people have felt the same, that this guy still has a heart in La Trobe because you have given 10 years and you were all about it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, but in fact, I even do it now in terms of, I don't say La Trobe anymore, but when I talk about La Trobe, I said, we used to do this. So I still refer to myself as as still working there in a way.
But it's a good thing. It
yeah.
shows that your commitment and your authenticity for that organization.
And honestly, I loved working there. It was one of some of the best days of my life. So always, have fond memories. Yeah.
Anything you want to wrap this up? Anything you want to tell to your audience, your education partners, your students? That's your camera. Go all in.
Look, all I think I would say is that if you're a student, as you discussed during the entire session, is 3 important things: planning, and more planning is required. Plan early, which is also critical importance. Do your research. Make sure you make the right decision because it is an expensive decision. And then finally, make sure that when you go to Australia, and this is the advice I would give to all potential students, is avoid talking to people from your own country. You can meet them for all you want while they're here, but when you go abroad or when you go to any other country, whether it's Australia or wherever you go, take the effort to talk to people from other countries, local people, because that's how you learn about them and how their life is. Yeah.
That's such a important tip or a hack, because see, I always say, if you're going to Australia or any destination, you're spending dollars and so much of time and hassles, and you want to still stay with Indians or with your same community, come on, get a life. Don't go abroad and spend so much of time. Probably you study in India and you go for your travel trips to different countries. So, but if Abizer is a success, if I'm doing okay, it's not because we just stick with our same community. It's always good to have same, like some known people around, but just to stick with Indians or with Chinese or with Nepalese, probably you can have a better experience if you get out of your comfort zone, stay with people which known to you, like-minded, but not only second clone to you. So anything which we are not doing good or you are not liking it, please put in comment. Go all in. If anything which is not good, just highlight, just comment. We are here to improve and to get better. Thank you on that note. Thank you so much.